Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Code Name Sister podcast. I'm your host, Nandi. Today, we're going to talk about people who use the reasoning that because my daddy wasn't there, this is who I am. First, I want to say, how many of you have been told that by someone? That the reason I'm not living up to some preconceived notion of who I should be is because one parent or the other wasn't there. And more time, 9 times out of 10, is usually because my daddy wasn't there. I know I had someone who used to tell me that all the time. If my daddy was here, I could have been a pilot. I could have been a this. I could have been a that. And my thing is, when you are aware of something, at the point that you become aware of it, that's the point where you have the ability to control the outcome, to at least work to control the outcome. Now, some of us, we come through things that just so traumatic, but a lot of times when we come through things like that, we don't even think in terms of had my daddy been there or had my mama been there. Usually is, I wish they hadn't been there. I wish I had never known them, that they hadn't given birth to me, or something like that. But when we have somebody, especially when somebody uses that early on in a relationship, it's almost as if they want you to give them a pass. They want you to hand them a little card, and then anytime they decide that they need to use it to manipulate their way out of something or manipulate you into something, then they pull out that whole card and say, well, I only act this way, or I only expect this from you because my daddy wasn't there. When it's used as, I never had anyone to teach me how to be a man, that's usually a signal that you should leave, that you should go ahead and just cut your losses at that point, because that person has just told you that you are attempting to get into a relationship with someone who still has an immature mind. I was going to say a childlike mind, but childlike minds are minds of innocence to a great degree. The minds of people like this are not innocent. So to say childlike would not really be describing who that person is and what they're capable of. And it could also kind of throw you off guard because, you think you're messing around with a child, but this person could be somebody who is highly emotionally unstable. So when you hear somebody telling you that, they're giving you clues. We always say, if I had seen the signs, sometimes it's not even just that you see the signs, but you hear the signs. And that one, like I said, is a big connection. And what brought it back to the frontal lobe for me was a friend of mine who had recently began to see someone who, she saw him as, a decent guy. He had a job, income. He seemed to be kind of stable. He had multiple vehicles, and one of the things he told her early on when they finally met in person was that he didn't have a father around to teach him how to be a man. And when it comes to that, when someone admits that, you have to think, okay, well, what kind of trauma is someone like this bringing to me that early on he's using the excuse? Because that's what it is, especially when you're at our age, when you're in your 50s and stuff like that, you should not still be running around with that rhetoric about if you had had a father, if your father was there, you could have been a better man, because that means you actually know what it is that you're doing that is not something that is usually a trait of a well-developed man. So you know this, but again, you want that whole card. You want to be able to play it whenever it's convenient. You want to be the victim. That means even when you're victimizing someone else, you're looking for that person to say, well, he had it bad too. He didn't have no man to show him how to be a man. Ladies, it's not our job to turn males into men. And even when they are sons, they need a lot of influence from men. That man does not have to be their father. If you look at some African cultures, when they're going through a certain rites of passage, their father is not even allowed to participate in it. The child is subject to the other men of the village. So that way there's no favoritism practiced amongst the young boys there who are going into manhood. Here in America, it's even more difficult for us when it comes to evolving from that manhood, that girlhood and and malehood into manhood and womanhood, because we don't have any agreed upon rites of passage. And contrary to what a lot of people believe, prom and high school graduation is not a rites of passage. Now, for some girls and boys, it may mean the losing of their virginity, and I would hope that that is not what you're using as a gauge of rites of passage. But other than that, in America, there is no set standard of what constitutes passage into these categories of adulthood. So we have a lot of people out here who look like adults and may in some instances appear to be functional adults, but mentally and emotionally, they're not there. And the thing about it is, with those people, the older they get, the less likely it is that they will be there. And they'll just walk around, they'll just go around from one person to another, just terrorizing the hell out of other people. So if we can head them off at the pass, excuse me, I had to take a drink of water. If we can head them off at the pass, put up that hand, face palm them, we save ourselves a lot of wasted energy, and hopefully we get this done. We get to this point before there's any true emotional investment, because that's what they're looking for a lot of times. Because if they can get past that point of you giving them that whole card and use it to manipulate you long enough for there to be some emotional investment on your part, then they can start the types of relationships that they are accustomed to. And those are the ones where they receive more than they actually give. And that they want you to become a projection of who they are. So if they're unmotivated, uninspired to do anything, if they're an alcoholic, whatever it is that they're doing that you might frown upon or might give you cause to say this person is just not on my level, they want you to become that. And in getting you to give them that whole card, that helps that process along. And don't believe that you're the first person that they've done this to, because someone who's coming up that way and who is using that as an excuse, because my daddy wasn't there. If my daddy was there, I could have been this, I could have been that, which is an excuse. Because you got to think, how many people, especially black people, how many of us have come up without that father figure in the house or whatever it was, and we still managed to accomplish some of the goals that we set forth? A lot of us have done that. Some of the people listening to this are those people. You've done it in spite of and despite your circumstances. So what's the difference between you having done it and them continuing to use it as an excuse? You know, that's kind of like the people who say, one day I'm going to start a business, and you already have a business. So you can't really understand that concept, because the minute you started to visualize a business, you began working toward getting that business off the ground. These people are just happy to talk about it. Some of them may have even did some research, collected some information along the way. They might even have more research done than you could have thought to do. They could have a whole folder put aside on their computer where they've compiled all kind of things. They may have even learned about LLCs and just any number of things, but they have yet to apply it. And that's the whole, and that's what differentiates those who, in spite of and despite who it was that brought them up, they still manage to achieve certain things, and the ones who use it as an excuse. And like I said, nothing looks worse on a male than to be in his 30s, 40s, 50s and stuff, 60s, and still blaming the absence of his father. It's like, at some point, you might not get over the fact that you didn't have your father there, but you should have also found a way to move forward from that. Now, I understand that a lot of us don't always get the mental help assistance that we need. And a lot of times, if we don't get it in childhood, it can be difficult, if not impossible, for us to seek it in adulthood or have it work successfully for us. considering that much of the mental health field is not designed for and around Black people. Those I give you, we can understand that, but that doesn't mean that we have to be in relationships with those people. I mean, it might be a loss somewhere, but we shouldn't be the ones that are sustaining that loss. Because when you get with people like that, you can't be their doctor. You're not their nurse. You can't repair them. It's not your job to repair broken adults. That is something that person has to do on their own. Just like you may have put in the work to get yourself together, that is something that they are going to want to have to do for themselves. And I would strongly encourage you not to allow that to happen within a relationship, because you're going to lose a lot in the process, and you got to think about, is it really worth it? And if you're willing to say that it's worth it, then you also have to look at yourself and say, why would I sacrifice like this? What do I stand to lose or gain, even with yourself? What type of self-esteem do you have? Self-respect you have, where you would let a person continuously manipulate you on the basis that one day they might get healed by going to therapy? My suggestion again is let them do that on their own time. And then if there ever comes a time where their therapy is successful and y'all meet up again and it's supposed to be that way, then it happens. But a lot of the time, the majority of the time, that is not what happens. That person, for one, usually thinks that everybody else has the problem. So they're less likely to go and seek the problem. And since mental health, again, is not like this significant thing, this important thing within our community, people go from the cradle to the grave with problems in our community. So you have to look at that when you decide that, I'm going to give everything I can to this relationship. I'm going to make sure that he gets into therapy or she gets into therapy. I'm going to be there to hold their hands. And, that's, that whole, Captain Saver, I don't really feel like cursing a lot tonight. So I'm not going to say that, but you know what I mean. But it's not your job to save people. I know the church be teaching us that, but hey, okay, leave it to the pastor then, because you ain't the pastor. It's not your job to be saving people. It is your job to place yourself in a safe environment, to keep your children in a safe environment, to keep y'all healthy, safe and healthy. Those are the two key things that you should be trying to maintain in a household, not battering somebody else's mental illness that places y'all in precarious positions, and not all forms of mental illness are that way, but certain ones, when they use it for manipulation in ways that benefit them, where they don't really have any empathy for other people, they just want to get what they can get from you. Those are the kind of people that you don't want in your house. You don't want that kind of stuff in your house, and you don't want that happening to your children, because that's a cycle that gets repeated. And you don't want your children going out there into the world terrorizing other people as they're coming up, and you don't want to lose who you are in the process. So there's a lot to lose when you let these people come with their absent parent issues, who want to tell you about their absent parent issues, and then they want to tell you how you should think, the things that you should do. No. Cut your losses early. And I know I can't tell y'all what to do. So even when I say cut your losses early, you grown enough to do whatever the hell it is you want to do. But just be aware, just like they are aware that their daddy wasn't there and that's who they blame all their issues on. You be aware too that if that's the route that you decide to take, that you chose to take that route, that you weren't brainwashed into it. You were well aware of where it was heading, and you decided to ride it out. I know that there are some women out there who say, with all the shortages of men, and I don't know where that one came from. Okay, but with all the shortages of men, isn't it better to have some portion of a man than no man at all? I don't know. That is so ridiculous. The thought of that is ridiculous. So you're willing to take a half a ninja in your house just to have a man? You can buy a dildo and get the same result. And you know what? The dildo is not going to manipulate you. It ain't going to cuss you out. It's not going to steal from you. It's not going to take from you more than you're willing to give. You would be better off with that. You don't have to support it. You don't have to have arguments with it. I mean, you see where I'm going with this? You don't have to see it destroy your children and you and everything you're working for and whoever and whatever you are. So I mean, just buy a dildo. That's all I have to say on this subject.
I can recommend some
Thank
good places.
thank y'all so much for listening to yet another episode of my podcast. This is Nandi. You've just listened to the Code Name Sister podcast with Nandi.